Hello, everybody, and welcome to the updated version of social media networking. Yes, things do change from the last time I did this recording, so I thought it would be a good opportunity to get us all back up to date. What I want to do is start with some of the stuff that hasn't changed. For example, talking about what is a network. And when we talk about social media networking, we have to go back to the basics and understanding that networking is networking. So what is a network? At the end of the day, what it is, it's just your ability to expand who you know and who knows you, to continue to build relationships. That's what's really vital. And as you think this through, anybody could be part of your network. For example, very recently I was doing a meeting to file my taxes with my accountant, and I took the opportunity to learn a bit about what's going on in his business and things that might be going on, and I learned some interesting information. And in fact, he's now sending his recruiter to work with our organization for applicants. So that was a great opportunity. So that's just a good example. But a network you could meet people in church groups, community groups. If you are your neighbors, your friends, your family, if you join professional associations, headhunters, if you're in a company, there might be customers that you could network with. It's really any opportunity to meet with other folks who have the opportunity to see you, know you, and learn about value that you can create. Where this plays an important role in terms of job search is, many times managers hire people or interview people who are referred by a trusted colleague as opposed to taking a chance on somebody that's totally unknown. So, this is particularly true when times are tough, when jobs are scarce. But I think it's normally true all the time. It just makes sense. It's human nature. And that has built this thing called the hidden job market, which basically what that means is jobs getting filled before people have an opportunity to know that they're open. So that's good to know that exists. In fact, it happens all the time. Even somebody who's promoted in place, say they go from a marketing analyst to a senior marketing analyst. That senior analyst job was not posted. It was just given to the person who was sitting in the job, and then they may or may not have hired another junior analyst. So that's one way it can happen. It could also happen that finding the right person before the job's open prevents it from getting posted anywhere. So it's amazing that this has been this idea of networking is not new, but yet there's people who still don't feel comfortable doing it, and partly it's due to anxiety. And I will say that there's 7.5 billion people on Earth, every one of which have some anxiety from time to time. So that's something just to get over. In terms of this need, this feeling of being needy, or thinking that you should find a position without anybody's help. I mean, job search is a team sport, and there's really that. Even if you just are posting to a job board, somebody on the other side is there to help you. So it's never just you and you alone. And some folks just feel embarrassed that they don't have a job, and that and it really for decades with things like downsizing, outsourcing, and et cetera, everybody has either been employed or knows somebody who's been unemployed. So these reasons really are just, they're not as valid, I guess, as you would think. And in fact, most people know the deal, that you're looking for a job, that they're looking to add value and how you can contribute to them. And this other stuff is not baggage you need to bring along with you. If there's one thing to know about networking, it boils down to what is it? It's not asking for a job, and that's a really important thing. Networking is not job search. It's parallel to job search. You have to watch I guess, you can see how somebody would want to do this, but you got to watch for asking for too much too soon. And really, networking is about relationship building, not asking for too much. If you walked up to a stranger and asked them for money, they would look at you like you're crazy. And the reason they would is because you've asked for something beyond the bounds of your relationship. And that is very, very true. When somebody says, hey, you work in that company, take my resume and give it to HR, please. That's asking beyond the bounds of your relationship, because that person may not know you that well, may not want to take the risk on you, so you have to watch it. But what people will do, is they will provide information. Most of networking is really just walking up to somebody and asking questions. You can ask them about their company, about their job, about the kinds of things that their company is doing, and maybe probe a little bit if your field happens to be marketing, let's say. How does marketing work in your company? How are your customers? Who do you target? And those kinds of things. And people will be more than willing to share that with you. Advice is another really important thing. In fact, it's the gold of networking. If you were to ask simple questions like, if you were me, what would you do? That's tremendous, because they will give you basically the tips that will work in their world, in their environment. So that would be a really smart thing to do. The other thing it does is when somebody gives you advice and you literally write it down and repeat it to them to make sure you understand the advice, you can then say how much you appreciate the advice, and then you can ask if it would be okay to follow up with them down the road for any other questions, or to let them know how you did based on that advice. That's really what any salesperson does. I mean, they plant a seed and they set up a follow-up meeting, and that's kind of what you're doing here. Is you're planning your second meeting during your first meeting. How many times have I met people who write to me or ask me, what's a good time to follow up? Well, if you're asking that question, it's already too late. That's something you should have set up in advance. Now, if you do all these things right, information and advice, what might come as a result of that are referrals, good referrals. So the person you're networking with might say, hey, if you're interested in that area, you seem like a good person, I know somebody else you might talk to. And that's how you get the ball rolling. It doesn't work quickly, but it does connect you in ways that just simple applying for jobs cannot do. So it's like anything, you should have a plan. And the best part of the networking plan is just to know, what is your value? What can you offer to someone? Or have stories where you can talk about problems that you've solved. And those could be really great value adds in a networking conversation, to actually go through step by step things that you've done in your past. And that could really help educate the person you're networking with on how you can add value in their company or in their industry. Now, those of you who might have very specific career goals, in order to do that, you may need to even dive deeper into learning about specific industries and specific target companies. But whether you're looking generally at multiple companies and industries or specific, knowing what your value is in those industries is critical. So basically, good networkers have two things in common. One is they have that communication strategy about their value, about their expertise. And the second thing is a proactive way to meet people. Now, if you're doing networking all the time, you could be doing absolutely anything. You could be pushing your cart at the grocery store with a networking mindset, which allows, if you happen to bump into somebody, you can strike up a conversation. I mean, literally, networking can happen any place. But being proactive means get things on your calendar, attend fairs, conferences, meetings, follow up with ex-bosses, anything you can do to just keep yourself out there and making people aware of your plans. So to summarize this initial part of the presentation, basically here are the traps. So networking is, don't ask for a job. It's too much. Don't expect too much too soon. Don't ask others to circulate your resume, but do focus on information, advice, and ultimately referrals. Now, this is all incredibly important as the job world, the recruiting world, continues to change more and more and more. I mean, I remember back, just when the internet sites were gaining popularity. I mean, companies like Monster.com, if you were to go back, mid 90s, let's say, where people were still mailing resumes and things like that, and then seeing the shift happen so quickly to online applications. It almost seemed like it was overnight. Anecdotally, I would say, 1 year it was like 1% of the people were using job boards. Just a year later, it seemed it was 2/3 of the world was using job boards, and it just kept going faster and faster and faster. So it just caught on like wildfire, and it's getting more and more sophisticated now as we've moved from simply just applying for jobs online, but interviewing online, creating portfolios online, etc. So I'd like to go through a couple of examples of where social networking began and where it still is. So for example, here's a firm called Landing Expert. Let me show you this. So Landing Expert. So this is a firm. It's run by a gentleman, Alex, and he created this very nice website where you can go to this thing called networking groups, and you can search by location if you wanted to do that, by state if you wanted to. Let's say we wanted to go here, do it by state, and it'll now, so for example, here's a bunch of networking groups in Connecticut, and if we went down a little further for you guys in New Jersey, so here's one Business Executive Networks group in Baltimore, Maryland. Here's one Financial Executives group in Bergen County, New Jersey. Let's click on one to show you what's in this site. So it tells you the name of the group. It basically tells you a little bit about when they meet. There it is. It's the third Wednesday of the month at 6:30. It tells you where they're meeting in this Pell Avenue building, Robert Half offices in Saddlebrook. It gives you, if we go through this a bit here, it tells you, here's the person who runs the group and his email address. So it's a very good site that there's so many networking groups that are out there. This used to be like a big secret. People would hide these groups because they were trying to get into the hidden job market. This particular site, when Alex decided to put this together, what he did was he said that's kind of silly. Why is it? It should be really open to everybody, which is, we should be grateful for him for doing that. Alex right here from Landing Expert. So, but it's a great site, and it's an example of social networking, people helping people secure, whether it be employment or set up new businesses or create projects together and what have you. It's really terrific. So know that that's out there and that exists. Continuing on here, there's you've probably all seen Indeed.com, and you probably look at Indeed.com as something which is just a basic job board, when in reality it's more than that. So if we were to just say I'm looking for, let's say, a financial analyst job, let's start with that one and hit find jobs. So yeah, so what I just did was I looked for a way to look for a position, but then from a networking perspective, you see here, each position is connected to a company. Each position has reviews of people who work there. So here's a BASF, big company. It's got over 1,900 views. Here's a smaller company with 29 reviews. And you see that it's ranked and rated. And you can actually go into these reviews. Consider this like any any Web 2.0 strategy, like TripAdvisor or Yelp or whatever. It's people telling you what it's like to work in these places. And it'll kind of tell you here, well, when I was hired there, this person didn't seem to like it very much. They thought it was too German, which is interesting. And you can kind of go through all of the reviews here. I see they sorted it, that particular one, based on low ratings. Here's somebody who loved it, who was a contractor in chemistry. Here's another person who liked it, called it very professional. And you can see the ratings over here. 887 people gave it a 5 out of 5. In terms of this particular company, very little is rated low. It looks like it's a good company to work for. So that's terrific, and that tells you something about what it's like to work for BASF. Take advantage of that. So let's continue on from there. Google. Google is another. Think about it. Most people, when they're asked a question, the first thing they do is they go to Google and they check it out. You can apply for jobs on Google. You can type in like financial analyst or whatever, or you can put in really what do many people do is they'll put their name in to see how it pops up. It'll tell you. So here's a little bit about. Oh, there's my picture right there. So there you go. So hopefully. Oh, right at the top here, you'll see the profile, Bob Franco, Seton Hall University. So that's me. And the punchline on that is when you search yourself on Google, ideally, what you want to have happen is have your name come up with your LinkedIn profile. Your hope is that you make your LinkedIn profile be the first thing that pops up when people search on you through Google. And that's really, so what you're trying to do is optimize your LinkedIn profile to make sure that it comes up on searches, whether it be in a LinkedIn search or in a Google search. And let's kind of jump over to LinkedIn, which is now, it's just growing and growing. As of this particular recording, it's about 500 million active users, which is incredible. So let's kind of spend some time on LinkedIn. So you should have your profile. You should have a picture of yourself, and you can have a little bit of a tagline or something that tells people what you are and what you're all about. You can certainly come up with a lot of keywords here in your summary section. I think that's really important. To me, again, this is me personally, I think the most important thing is to be found on LinkedIn, meaning have a lot of words that are used in searches so that you pop up. So I would recommend that. As you can see here, I'm in the class of 500 plus connections. In reality, as of this recording, I'm just shy of 6,000, which, by the way, is not that impressive. I've been on it since 2003, so I just, many people have connected with me over the years. But and I'll show you why that's important in a few moments. But if we continue to kind of go through the profile, so this, LinkedIn does give you some examples of like who's looked at me in the recent past. It might say who's read an article of mine or how many times I've appeared in searches. So that's really cool. Now, as you have articles, this is really important, that a way that you can make yourself known on LinkedIn is to pop an article up from time to time. Now, these are not long, drawn-out articles. This is simple articles. Here I wrote a picture. I wrote a quick story about the person who took this picture of the famous first flight from the Wright brothers. And it's an extremely interesting story. How the person who took this picture, hardly ever used a camera before and just happened to have been known by the Wright brothers and was fortunate enough to be, chosen to do this. And, there's a lot of interesting quirks about that particular story. But the point of it is that if he were to put his credentials up against other photographers, he would not have been selected by the Wright brothers because he wasn't that qualified. But because they knew him and trusted him, he became the person who they asked to do it. So that's a good lesson. The other thing is you want to make sure that your profiles are pretty intensely covered. So your title, and I personally use my resume words as inside my descriptions. I find that's, I try to use it as a source document to write my resume. So it's and actually having more words there and there's more language there, it actually makes me more searchable, coming up on searches. Your school, you're going to get your school in there. Endorsements, make sure you list what skills you want people to see that you have. And more important than the endorsements are really the recommendations. So you can see here, I have given 22 and received 37. I would say, I would absolutely go out of your way to, if you're on your position, on an internship, on a job, is rather than have somebody just write a form letter and put it on a piece of paper, that's not easy to validate for a recruiter, but a LinkedIn recommendation is easily verifiable because you got the person's name, you got their face, their picture. It's hard to cheat on LinkedIn. Then you have a great section called accomplishments, and in here you can write things, any certifications, courses you've taken, and just you name it. There's a lot of things that you can write here. And so, for example, any organizations that you're a part of. I literally, I was a leader in the town Boy Scouts and in the town baseball and basketball program, whatever. It is amazing how people will search just on things like Boy Scouts or basketball coach or things like that. So it makes you searchable. It's stuff that you wouldn't necessarily put on a resume, but LinkedIn gives you the opportunity to put it in a pretty good place. If you're named in any websites or in articles online, just it's a good place. You can pop them in there. Again, you wouldn't do that on your resume. If you've ever published anything, absolutely go out of your way. You can put the name of the article or book or whatever that you wrote. And it's just it's a great place to catch a lot of stuff. It's really amazing. And so that's cool. And then you can see you can follow groups and companies and schools and you name it. It's really quite amazing. Here I just jumped into the Seton Hall group. 57. What is it? How many? This 57,000 alumni. You can actually go in and see the alumni that are in there. You can, it basically gives you the profile of the Seton Hall population. So if I only wanted to meet people who, lived in New York, let's say, and I only wanted to find people who worked at, say, let's say Prudential, and I only wanted to meet people who are in finance, let's say, and it basically will break it down to who are the people. So it's a very good, simple search tool. It's pretty cool in that regard. So I would recommend that. There's also, you can do the cheap way and just go up to your search engine and write things like Prudential Financial up top, and then it'll tell you, how many people are there, so you can see all the people who are in Prudential. And then the reason I did that was just to show you these numbers that you have at the end here. So there are folks, so these people here, I clicked on the one that were not my connections. So you can see that you have number 2s next to it. So if it's a number 1, that means I know them directly, which means I don't know Nadia directly. But I have 14 shared corrections with Nadia. So what this says is by me going through one of those 14 people, I might be able to be introduced via LinkedIn to Nadia. And I will say, to me, the goal of LinkedIn is that so here's the 35 connections that I have. So those are my ones. So my one. You can see the difference there. But to me, the goal of LinkedIn is that number 2. My close to 6,000 number 1 connections actually can give me access. I'm going to guess to well over 10 million possibilities. Not that they're all sitting around waiting to help me out, but they're out there. It's a way to kind of get connected to folks. And the lesson really is, get to know people who are connected, connect to people who are connected, so you get more chances to network. So a little good tutorial for there on LinkedIn. Going forward further on this, then there's always this Twitter thing. Twitter's interesting how it's evolving. And right now it's still well over 1 billion users, but they're saying now that active users are maybe about a third of that. So if we were to go into Twitter, and let's see, I want to go into, So Twitter is an interesting place. I'm just going to type in a company name here. Let's see. There it is, Raytheon. So here's a company, Raytheon, that actually uses Twitter as a part of their recruiting strategy. So here we have Raytheon Jobs sign up for our hiring event June 21 in Allen, Texas. Here we have one about being a top-rated best companies in the United States from millennials. Here we have something about El Segundo openings. So Raytheon has made the conscious decision to use Twitter as a way of looking for talent. And just like any marketing, this is really important. Because if this job here, this engineering job, is not for me, what I might do is I might actually go in and retweet this, which means my network will now get exposed to Raytheon Jobs. And I'm almost making myself a recruiter for them. That's playing off this idea of viral marketing. Now, what this means is there are so many different social media sites that are out there. We're talking about LinkedIn and Google, and you name it. And now we're saying, oh, don't forget about Twitter. If you're targeting certain companies, and if they're on Twitter, you got to follow them. You got to find the companies you're interested in and follow them on Twitter, because if that's their primary way of getting the word out, then you need to be with them on that. Facebook is interesting. They all use it for different purposes. So LinkedIn is primarily about networking, although it does have a job board, which is quite good. Raytheon on Twitter is a good example of how we use social media for recruiting. Facebook is quite different. So now we're talking here over 2.2 billion people as of the time of this recording, and most people doing it on their phone. Which is amazing. So why wouldn't you be on Facebook? So if we would go to Facebook and kind of see what people are using them for in terms of social media. So there's my so you can see with my my U.S. Open thing that Facebook is really for personal for the most part. However, let's kind of go to Let's hit this here. There we go. That's the page I want. So ADP has made the decision that they're going to use Facebook as a recruiting tool, but they use it for very different reasons. So Facebook is really what? It's about getting to know folks. You can see they put really personal pictures on here. There's like, what do you love about working at ADP? Here's somebody so look at Nicholas is writing. Nicholas Garner here is writing to this person's quote, posting on ADP, and writing, "Sol is an ADP rock star." Now that sounds possibly like not a professional way to present yourself, right? However, Facebook is really not 100% professional. It's really for relationship building. So whoever wrote that comment is really writing that comment not to be, how can I put it? They're not doing it to look for a job exclusively. What they're doing it is to get known within the ADP recruiting circles. That looks awesome, guys. Great tribute. There's this person, Shane Chatterton, who responded to something as well. So if Shane happens to be an external candidate, Shane can now, if some recruiter gets to know Shane's name just through posts like this, it's a way for you to get known inside the organization, which is quite interesting. Okay, so that's a little bit about Facebook. So use it to create relationships. The process, by the way, it seems cold to the recruiter. It also seems cold, it seems cold to the applicant. It also seems cold to the recruiter. So these ways of trying to network and get friendly with each other it actually makes a lot of sense that things are moving down that path. Now, it's a few things I want to talk to you about before we close. There's a lot of other networks that are out there. So, for example, blogs. Now, I'm not really a big user of Tumblr anymore. I've kind of been, or Blogger for that reason. As you saw in the LinkedIn presentation example I gave you, if I was going to write an article, I would put it on LinkedIn. But a lot of people are using these other blogs. I mean, it's amazing. There's some major organizations that use Tumblr still as their primary social media site. And there's probably some reasons internally why they have to do that as opposed to using Facebook or Twitter. But there are companies doing people to pay them to write articles or pictures or whatever on Tumblr, which is amazing, and Blogger as well. So you may need to get them on your radar screen. In terms of Instagram and Flickr, I'm just going to lightly say the purpose of those, they're really complementary apps to Facebook. So you'll see oftentimes when some event is being covered, the postings will get saved in either Flickr or Instagram, and then they'll move them into Facebook. But it's good to, if it's possible for you to follow, you should certainly do that. The ones I want to show you here on the bottom are quite interesting, though. I want to get a little deeper into that. I would start with Pinterest. So Pinterest. So for those of you who are in any creative world, whether it be like marketing, where people would carry in these huge portfolios of their work. Well, what is Pinterest? At the end of the day, what is Pinterest? It's really just an online bulletin board. Now, before you saw in my LinkedIn profile, I have the two publications, one about corporate storyteller and one about the sport parenting book. So if somebody wanted to, if I wanted to bring a presentation with me, I could actually store it in Pinterest and pull it up on my phone and just show them, the different, so corporate storyteller, for example, there are pins on there from references that I used to create the corporate storyteller book. So Pinterest can be very useful in your interview process instead of bringing heavy loads of stuff with you, on an interview. So it's interesting. Periscope is an interesting one as too. So what is it? I mean, it's many corporate executives and politicians. They do these things called town halls and whatever. Here's an example of somebody at J.C. Penney. Was it Jock Penn doing a presentation about J.C. Penney. So you can look at this live, and then very often they save these presentations, but they're interesting, and it's another way to get insights into a company and what's going on strategically. One that I've used recently quite a lot is this Meetup.com. So it's again, these are all apps. You can put these all on your phone. It does. I'm not on my phone right now, but you should. You can actually do that. So Meetup is you. So you can basically classify yourself in terms of areas of interest. One of the areas of interest that I put was around technology, and just by doing that, I now get informed about other events that are happening related to technology. So, for example, I signed up for this J.P. Morgan Chase approach to blockchain. There's like Facebook. There's a lot of parts of Meetup that are just for fun. You can see that there's this board game thing and game night thing that's happening. But this is But I also can use it for serious purposes as well. So something to certainly consider. And then the last one I want to show you is YouTube, which is what we're on right now. Now, YouTube is, to me, if I were to say, obviously LinkedIn to me is the number one, by far the most important for job search in terms of social media. I would say YouTube is second. And the reason for that, there's so many reasons. I mean, one of them is you can record your presentations and put them up on YouTube. And if part of your interview process was, can you send me an example of a presentation, you can send them the link to YouTube, and it's very impressive, as opposed to just sending just a straight PowerPoint. So you can certainly do that. The other thing, probably more important, is looking at how you can research companies on their YouTube channel, whether it be, Deloitte, all the big four. If I want to learn about EY culture, I can go to their website and just study it and learn from it. And frankly, you should do that because somebody is doing that, preparing for their interview, and so should you. Amazon is known for putting projects and strategies and things like that. So pay attention to that when you're hitting your target companies. Absolutely do research, not just on their website, not just on Google, but absolutely go to YouTube as well. And frankly, what you'll get on YouTube is a deeper level of analysis than you would just looking at a couple of streamlined paragraphs on a website. So just to conclude here, recently there's been studies about how do students look for jobs, and most still are saying it's probably the job boards or a career fair or a company site. It was much lower when the options were through a blog or through a social networking site. But just like the job boards, the way they took off overnight, it is conceivable that the same thing will happen with social networking. So be ready. That's the main thing. So I'm going to end it there. Thank you for your time and attention. I hope you found this a useful experience. Thank you.